You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan Sports Truth Seekers, and welcome to the Michigan Sports Truth episode 243 on Spreaker. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me, Ed. Before we begin, we heard the news earlier that Red Wings television play-by-play announcer on Fox Sports Detroit, Ken Daniels, faced a tragedy where his 23-year-old son, Jamie, passed away, whatever the case was, and we all pass our prayers, all of them, and our condolences to Ken and his family and friends, even his color commentator partner Mickey Redmond, and the radio commentators Ken Cal and Paul Woods.
Yeah, Taylor. Yeah, before we can get to anything regarding our normal topics, however, it is, without notice here, that we have to mention this unfortunate and absolute sad occurrence that happened today. Obviously, as you mentioned before, thoughts, condolences, and positive vibes definitely go out to Ken, his family, and really the Red Wing organization, because, as long as Ken has been there, he's called over 1,000 games for the team in his telecast career there. He's become as much of a big part involved with the organization as anybody. So, in a way, it is to them, it would definitely feel like a loss of a family member, especially at this time of the year when we're getting so close to holidays. That's absolutely terrible to hear. So, again, my absolute thoughts, prayers, and condolences go out to Ken and his family, and I wish them nothing but luck in this time of grief.
Yep. We may not know how much time Ken Daniels needs off away from the booth, but we may assume that he won't be at the Joe Louis Arena tomorrow night when the Wings host the Columbus Blue Jackets, but we'll get to the Wings later on this episode. Right now, we have some football to recap here, and we're going to start with the pros this time. The Lions are on a roll.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Tell me about it.
Yeah, they just beat the New Orleans Saints 28-13 at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. They beat them 3 times in a row. In 2014, it was at Ford Field when they hung on by 1 score. In 2015, it was a high-scoring shootout when they hung on by 1 score, I believe 45-38. And now a 20...
All Monday Night Football, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And then They won by 2 scores, 28-13 this past Sunday. We predicted the Saints to win that matchup, obviously, because even though they were 5-6 going into that game, we thought they were a better team than they were the last 2 seasons. But going into that game, the Saints were in a bad slump. They've lost like 4 or 5 in a row going into it, and the Lions appeared to keep them in check with their powerful defense. And even their secondary defense started doing their job more by coming up with 3 interceptions against New Orleans quarterback Drew Brees, who was one of the top NFL quarterbacks in the entire NFL this season.
Oh, man!
Yeah, one of the best quarterback QBs in the league, who's having an incredible year. He's his 15th, 16th year. He's 39, almost approaching 40, yet he's still churning out production as if he was 25 again. Worth noting that he had a consecutive home win game streak of about 50 or so games where he threw a touchdown. That streak was ended because, like you mentioned, in addition to those 3 interceptions by Detroit secondary, though he threw over 326 yards, 0 touchdowns whatsoever. So, impressive note to know of in this game, that you kept a quarterback of that caliber off the scoreboard, that Drew Brees was going to get his. There are a couple plays where, as scheme as you want, you try to might, he was going to find a way eventually get a deep ball to an air. And that's what happened, but it didn't cripple the Lions the way I thought it might have. If this was, say, 2011, 2012, 2013 kind of defenses, you would assume that the Saints would have gotten at least 25, if not close to 30 scored in this game, correct? So to see this team, even though, 326 yards through the air, but they held them in check. They kept them off the field on third downs, and that was another big key. Detroit, they won the time of possession by almost, +8 or +9. They had almost 37 minutes. 37 minutes. So, excuse me, that's a double-digit margin in terms of time of possession won here. So you managed to not only keep New Orleans' defense on the field by getting them tired, by controlling the time possession, but you also managed in another fashion, in another manner, to keep number 9 in black off, on the sidelines and off the field, because that really was the definition for the Lions to win, which was keep Drew Brees' chances as limited as possible, and they did a spectacular job of doing it.
Yeah, number 9 in blue. You said number 9 in black. Pardon the interruption, but
black as referring to Brees, since that's one of the Saints' primary team.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. But Stafford was wearing number 9 too. That was the part that confused me here. But continue.
Yeah, but speaking of number 9s, though, Stafford, this is one of my points that I wanted to find from this one. He did an excellent job. As yet again, he seems to be making his case more and more clear that he should be seen as a viable MVP candidate this year. I don't know if he'll exactly win, because he is going against a bit of a stacked field. Whether it be Derek Carr, Matt Ryan, some would argue either or, Ezekiel Elliott or Dak Prescott from Dallas, and of course there's always the Tom Brady factor, even though you want to argue for the case of valuable. Not only was Tom Brady suspended for 4 games, in those 4 games his team went 3-1. So whereas if you take Matthew Stafford off of this Lions team, where in the hell would they be at right now? They certainly would not be at 8-4. That's for damn sure. So I think in terms of what the name on the tin exactly says regarding the award, most valuable player, that alone should give Matthew Stafford a clear-cut shot. But that's another topic for another day. How he performed in this game was quite fantastic. 30 of 42, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which was an absolute bomb to Golden Tate on a third down play, which effectively sealed the deal, if you want to talk about it, in terms of making this game as competitive as possible. It did that, and then some. There was a point of string in the game where Stafford had at least 14 or so straight completions, which I believe became a new career record for him. He kept finding ways to, even when it seemed at certain times that his protection was failing him, he used his mobility, his seemingly newfound mobility that, if you want to be honest, has been developing for quite a number of years now, able to get himself out of bad situations what could have been gone down as easy sacks or bad losses of game. And Stafford, again, using his legs, gave himself in advantageous positions where he would get you enough yards for a short, second and short, third and short, or just get first down himself in some instances and cases. So, great job by Stafford all around. Solid, in some instances, solid team performances. You had Golden Tate coming alive. It seems like that bad miscommunication in Chicago, where it led to Stafford cussing out Tate on the sideline, that was the turning point that was needed, because since then he's been on absolute fire, coming alive in stretches where he was needed and mattered the most. You remember the St. Louis game. You remember, of course, the first Minnesota game where he won the game in overtime with a spectacular touchdown reception, and then in this one, essentially getting the dagger touchdown to put away to kill the Saints' hopes and chances of trying to come back and win. So what else could I say besides, you have great defensive play, which, correct me if I'm wrong, this is now, the 8th time, and which makes sense in all Detroit's victories of their 12 games this year. They have held an opponent to under 20 points. That is astounding. Now, I know one of those was a loss. That was Tennessee, I believe. But you could blame that more on bad offense because, like I said, bad loss on bad offenses, which was still early in the season, because usually when you hold an opponent under 20 points, you have a damn good shot at winning the game. So Detroit, other than that, they've done what they need to do in the other games. Where if the opponent scored 20 or less, usually they came out ahead with the victory. So great job by the defense, getting timely stops, getting the turnovers and interceptions from Breeze. Stafford doing his job, essentially carrying this team on his back. And hey, how about this? For the first time this whole entire season, the Lions did not need a fourth quarter comeback of any kind, of any variety, because they led this one wire to wire. It was a book-ended game, almost as complete as you can possibly get, minus save or so, converting a couple of those red zone opportunities from field goals into touchdowns. But I digress. At the end of the day, you got the win. It's all that matters. On to the next one.
Yeah, the Lions offense was still selling for more field goals than touchdowns. Matt Prater went 5 for 5 in that game, which kept the game as interesting as it could be because the running game couldn't get much going again. But like you said, Matthew Stafford keeping his mobility, doing his job. They came up with the Lions offense came up with 2 key touchdowns, including a 66-yard touchdown reception by Golden Tate. In the last few minutes, the Lions were up by 15 points, and when the Saints had the ball in crunch time, it appeared they weren't even going for the tie because there was already under a minute left, and the Saints were going for the short pass instead of a deeper pass in the end zone, because if they scored right away, they would have gone for the onside kick to try to get the ball back, as I was listening to it at work. Instead, they decided to wave their white flags. So the end result...
That definitely surprised me to see, because this is a noted New Orleans team that, at home especially, is known for trying to make this into a track meet as much as possible, shoot and score the type of games. So maybe it was the fact that the accumulation of how well the Lions defense had done and on how certain plays New Orleans offense just wasn't seem to be clicking, maybe it all had an accumulative effect towards the point, listen, they decided to call it a day, which was quite surprising because, when you see Drew Brees as on as he's been this year, you would think he would fight to the very end to try and make this as close a game as possible. So the lack of urgency being shown in that last drive of New Orleans was definitely an eye-opener, to say the least. So maybe that's a credit, like I said, probably a credit to how good of a job Detroit's defense had done that day, and it was just a figurative way of New Orleans just tipping their cap to the Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the end result showed that there was no need for late-game heroics this time, unlike their first 7 games, which were game-winning scores, whether it be a field goal by Matt Prater mostly or even a game-winning touchdown in the final minutes. Detroit held on by 2 scores instead of 1. For Detroit's part, with their 28-13 win, they now have a 2-game lead over the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers, because the Lions looked like a much hungrier football team on the road. Last Thursday, the Vikings lost to the Cowboys, and the Packers beat the Texans 21-13 at Lambeau Field this past Sunday. But the Lions, a little more dominating, but not much, not quite much more, but just a little more dominating because, again, they won by more than 1 score. They won by 2 scores, 28-13.
Yeah, but by the way of how they controlled it the whole entire game, and especially when compared to how the first 11 games have gone this season, it definitely felt more than just a little more. It felt like a substantial amount more than what we've grown accustomed to seeing this year. Yep,
that's true. Besides Stafford's offensive stats, Zach Zenner led them in rushing on the positive side. 9 rushes for 40 yards. That was it. Golden Tate, 8 catches for 145 yards and his 66-yard touchdown reception. Josh Bynes, 8 tackles, 5 of them solo. Devin Taylor came up with the only sack for the Lions. That came in the fourth quarter. That was the first Lions sack since on Thanksgiving Day in the third quarter against the Vikes. For New Orleans, Drew Brees, 31 of 44 for 326 yards and his 3 interceptions. Mark Ingram, 7 carries for 37, just 37 plus 5 receptions for 16, totaling to 53 total yards. Kobe Fleener, 5 catches for 86, and Brandon Cooks, 7 for 73. Team statistics. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, pardon the interruption, I was going to mention that another key factor for Detroit's defense to do well was to limit Mark Ingram. Now, it did help that coming into this game, he had been dealing with a nagging toe injury this year, but leading up to that point, he had a fairly impressive year and had given New Orleans offense another option of where to go to besides relying solely on the arm of Drew Brees. You could hand off to Ingram or just toss it out to him on a couple short passes on the backfield. He has that versatility, culpability, and speed. Remember, this is a Heisman Trophy winning running back out of Alabama, so he's got to be at least a very good player on the surface. So Ingram, obviously, I think you can tell limited by the toe injury, but still credit to the Lions for doing what they need to do to make sure that he didn't run roughshod over them, thus making it, again, even though it's a 15-point game, it felt like the deficit in terms of spiritually, it felt a bit larger than that due to how both teams were performing.
That's true. So the team statistics show total yards 422 to 369 Detroit, the Lions 337 passing yards, Stafford 341 actually, so that's 341, not 337. 85 rushing, but 341, that's 426 to New Orleans' 369 rushing yards, total yards, 319 passing, and 50 rushing. That's 376 total yards for New Orleans, and 50 rushing. Time of possession, like you mentioned, Ed, almost 37 minutes of possession time for Detroit. 36 minutes and 52 seconds to be exact. The Saints 23:08. No turnovers by the Lions besides Brees' 3 interceptions for New Orleans. Penalties. The Lions 6 for 39 yards. The Saints committed 10 penalties for 83. Third down conversions. Lions were 5 out of 12. The Saints were 6 of 13. No fourth down conversion opportunities for either team, but 16 passes for first downs for each team. Like you mentioned, it was going to be a shootout, but also another one of your keys to the game was to take away the deep ball, and the Lions came up with 3 interceptions, and they paid off.
Yeah, and I mentioned before some of the some of the schemes they probably could have done to limit the deep ball as much as possible. So one of those was definitely play a lot of zones in Tampa 2, and really, of course, put your linebackers and some of your secondary, like some of your slot guys, to come up and make the necessary tackle while the play was going on, to prevent obviously big gain yardage after the play, or after the catch or after contact, whatever the case may be. So, again, another credit to Detroit's defense of making sure even when the deep ball was schemed to be taken away, they still didn't let New Orleans offense beat them through a different method.
That's true. So after that, the injury report looks like this for Detroit. Armani Brown and Brandon Pettigrew were recently put on the non-football injury list. Quandre Diggs is now out for the season, and the questionable players are listed are the following: Marvin Jones, Theo Riddick, center Travis Swanson, Eric Ebron, Ezekiel Ansah, Dwayne Washington, Tahir Whitehead, DeAndre Levy, and safety Don Carey. But now I'm hearing that the the Lions have released Brandon Pettigrew after putting him on the non-football injury list. They put Justin Forsett on waivers, and he was claimed by the Denver Broncos. And the Lions have signed running back Joique Bell. Welcome back to Detroit.
Hip-hop hooray for everyone.
I love it.
So, with all that being said, the Lions are going to return home against the Chicago Bears at Ford Field Sunday at 1 on Fox. The Bears are 3-9 and 0-6 on the road. The Lions are 5-1 at home. Not so much a trap game because the Bears are worse than the Titans and Jaguars have been individually or separately, technically. The Bears are without their number one quarterback, Jay Cutler, and their best running back, Jeremy Langford, a former Spartan, who are both on the injury reserve. So they turn to another former Michigan State Spartan, quarterback Brian Hoyer. There are 4 questionable Bears to have yet to decide to return. Defensive back DeAndre Hall, safety Adrian Amos, wide receivers Eddie Royal and Marquess Wilson.
Funny thing to note here, Joique Bell, he's actually played in the first game this season, in the first meeting this season between these two teams, but because that was when he was a member on the Bears roster. In fact, he got a couple carries, 3 to be exact, only for a total of 6 yards. So,
just 6.
A role reversal here, familiar one for Joique.
Wow. Well, I guess Joique Bell's better off in Detroit. But looking at the statistical scouting report on the Chicago Bears, Brian Hoyer is 134 out of 200 for 1,445 yards and 6 touchdowns. Running back Jordan Howard, 181 carries for 883 yards and 5 touchdowns. And wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey, another guy to watch for the Lions' secondary defense, 40 catches for 630 yards and a score. The Bears' defense has allowed 342.6 total yards per game, 236.1 passing, and 106.5 rushing. So, Ed, your keys to the game.
Well, my keys to this are very simple. The fact that you are back at home for this one, and instead of in a more intimidating atmosphere than Soldier Field in Chicago, that should, by theory, give you a better chance because you'll hear the backing of the home crowd, give you better energy, obviously a better comfort level to playing at home as opposed to on the road, but also because the fact that you've gained this confidence, gained a much larger degree of confidence, because back then, that was the first meeting, that was with the team in the middle of a 1-3 start. Now here they are, they've won, now since that game, really, they've won 7 of their last 8, which, I mentioned the Tate misdirection play with Stafford was a turning point for him. I think that whole game in general was a turning point for this team on the season because, you heard us, Taylor. I'm talking about the fans, and Taylor, you definitely heard me. I was definitely on the, as you could say, the side that wanted, still on the side of not wanting to bring back Jim Caldwell, but with the team at 1-3 at that point, I definitely want him gone faster than, sooner rather than later. But give credit to them. They, like I said, kicked it into another gear. They rallied off a 3-game winning streak, and then now this current 4-game winning streak is at 7 out of their last 8, which has included fine defensive play, clutch play from their quarterback, and just in some instances you need good luck. So, if you're a good team, you take advantage of that luck. And the Lions, so far, have proven themselves to be a good team. They've taken advantage of it in more ways than one. They find themselves in sole possession of first place in their division, and they're in a very comfortable spot where even if they have a middling 2-2 record the rest of the way, that still most likely gets them in the playoffs. So the odds are very much in Detroit's favor. But they can't get too confident, can't get too cocky, because even though you claim, Taylor, this is not a trap game, I say it is for the intents purposes of this is a must-win. Because after this, things do get a little dicey. You have 2 straight games on the road, both against teams that have either on the same level or superior records. The Giants, who I believe are 8-3, 8-4, something like that, and the Cowboys 11-1, almost assuredly will cinch up the number one spot in the NFC. Cowboys, by the way, night after Christmas on Monday Night Football, and then you close out the season on New Year's Day at home against the Packers. Now, depending on how both teams may look from between now and that day, that could very well mean that the division title is on the line. So the pressure returns to Detroit. It's still in a way on them because they have to give themselves a safe distance and give themselves a little bit of cushion. So just in case they lose those two games to the Giants and the Cowboys, they still have that last game to fall back on at home against the Packers. And for the Packers though, things don't necessarily get easy for them because they have to play the Seattle Seahawks this Sunday, who just now come off of a 40-7 thrashing the previous week on Sunday Night Football against the Carolina Panthers. So this is a motivated team looking to make its case to say, hey, those who predicted our demise earlier were sadly mistaken. But I digress from that. What it boils back down to is that the Lions, they can't focus on what we're going to do in the playoffs or what we're going to do when we clinch the division or whatever. No, you need to focus on beating this team and handling your business at home. But one way for them to do that, they have got to really contain the running game. It's what really hampered and crippled them in the first meeting. I believe Jordan Howard, who was a fourth or fifth round draft pick, he ran over 100 yards over them. Now, I don't know what was more embarrassing, that or Brian fucking Hoyer throwing for over 300 yards and 2 TDs with a QBR of 89 and an overall rating of 120. Now, granted, Matthew Stafford didn't have such a great day that first game either. Only he had 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. One, in my opinion, was not his fault. But a very subpar day but obviously he's improved leaps and bounds since then. So this speaks to how this is a completely different Lions team from the very first meeting, and they have to keep that mentality and, like I mentioned, keep a grip on that likely and looming NFC North title.
I have 2 keys for the game on Sunday. Keep working that secondary defense, number 1, and watch out for Alshon Jeffrey. Might want to cover him mostly. And number 2, start using Joik Bell in the running game. Maybe he can be the answer to the Lions' rushing woes that have been going on this season.
Well, listen, I think it almost doesn't matter what running back you plug back in there. The way this team is set up and how they perform and execute with the running game, they're just not a running team, period. Their primary objective, if they're going to run the ball, they're going to do it using short passes and screens, basically. That is their running game. Luckily, you have a versatile back like Theo Riddick who can do that, catch the passes out the backfield and on the slant, on the move to pick up, give you some short yardage gains. Whereas Joik Bell, if you need to grind out a good 4 or 5 yard run on first and second down, the way this team is set up with their offensive line in terms of setting up good blocks for running lanes. Now, granted, late in the game against New Orleans, I thought they looked quite adequate. Zach Zenner, you mentioned the 40 yards he had in leading the team. He looked pretty damn good on those runs. But I remember a point that Chris Spielman brought up a few games back. Might have been either against St. Louis or Philadelphia. Zenner is at his best when he's used as a north-south back, which means hand him the ball and just let him burrow downfield. No, getting him off to the side, east and west lanes, or using tosses and sweeps. Just hand him the ball, let him be that downhill nose back and get you forward yards. Well, Joik Bell obviously is in that similar category. He is much bulkier, has more weight on him. He's in that prototypical power back role. But the way this team is set up, again, they're just not a primarily set you up with the run to begin with. And even when they try to go run, it doesn't lend out to produce great results, or at least results that you would need in terms of grinding out enough clock, end of game drives, that sort of same spiel. But it is good to have some familiarity with Joyke Bell back, I will say.
It'll take some chemistry to put the running game together, and we'll find out if it is put together since Joyke Bell has returned to Detroit. But the spread, that being said, is 8 points for Chicago, a +8 for Chicago. The over-under, 44 points. My prediction, I think the Lions will keep warming up their offense, and their defense will continue to do their job. The Lions will win 31-16. Your turn.
I think the safe bet, if you want to go to how both teams have looked coming into this matchup, the circumstances that remain high here or remain at stake here, I think I would agree with you saying the Lions would win. The question is, will it be the margin? Will they cover? Will they make the spread? I say their defense, particularly against, like I said, this is an absolute bad Chicago Bears team. Only reason why they have another win, they added another win to their total last week, because they're facing a team that was worse than them, the San Francisco 49ers, in snow. So that was an easy chalk-up layup W for the Bears. But to me, this should be an easy chalk-up layup win for the Lions. So I'm going to say Stafford and the offense, they keep rolling. The defense, I won't necessarily predict another 3-interception day, but who knows? But they do their best to stifle the run, get key stops on third down, and I say the Lions will win this one by a score of 27-10.
All right. I picked them to win by 15. You picked them to win by 17. That's very, very close. Almost like on The Price is Right.
Kinda, sorta.
Yeah. I make the first bet. You make it like a $1 or $2 bet great. You make a bid for an item that's $1 or $2 greater than mine.
I get I get the comparison. Very nice euphemism.
Yep.
I love it.
So that's enough Lions. That's all Lions. Now it's time to look at some college football here.
Touchdown, Michigan!
The Michigan Wolverines have now finished their football season being ranked 6th in the college football playoff poll.
Damn it!
Because Clemson beat Virginia Tech to remain in the college football playoff Final Four, and so the Michigan Wolverines will play the 11th ranked Florida State Seminoles in the Orange Bowl on December 30th. And that's about the only thing. That's about the only thing we need left was Virginia Tech to beat Clemson, and the opposite was actually the case.
Yeah. Now, in addition to that, you also needed a perfect storm. In a sense, it helped, but also hurt a little bit. Depends on how you look at it. With Penn State beating Wisconsin, because some would have thought, hey, between Clemson and Washington losing, that almost surely gets Michigan in. Question is, would they be a 3 or 4 in this hypothetical? Because Penn State, now knowing that what they did by winning the Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin, they in fact vaulted from 7th to 5th, actually leapfrogging Michigan. So I guess you could say that activity hurt the Wolverines in the sense that, they were essentially on a bye, whereas Penn State was fighting for something of greater value and eventually accomplished that goal. So I'm sure the committee rewarded that in the sense that, hey, you beat the team that is going to be in the playoff, and which, opens up a new can of worms of debate, because Penn State, even though, like you said, even though you can lay out the cons of you got 2 losses, and one of those included losing to a team by 39 points. You could, on the flip side, you could say, hey, we rebounded from that since then. Look how we played against the best of the best. We beat the team that was in our division. We went to the damn conference title game. They didn't. We won the conference title. They didn't. Neither did Michigan. We should be the ones in that playoff. So, but in terms of what the committee wants and ratings and back all that in and name recognition, you had to. Someone tells me either way they were going to go with Ohio State anyway, especially after they got that win by Michigan. Bullshit win. Excuse me. Editorial. But you know, it's just how it was. I think if Michigan, they needed not only a Clemson loss, in my opinion, but also most definitely needed a Washington loss. And the way Washington performed in the most one-sided fashion, and in which they did against Colorado, it sewed up the last spot for them for sure.
So that's going to be it. So number one, Alabama. Number 2, Clemson. Number 3, Ohio State, and number 4. What was the fourth ranked again?
Bama 1, OSU 2, Clemson 3, Washington 4.
Yeah, that's right. Correction made. Thank you very much. So the Crimson Tide number 1, the Buckeyes number 2, the Tigers number 3, and the Huskies number 4. So that's going to be. So that's that for the college football playoff. The rest
it's an interesting matchup. Though. It is an interesting matchup. We've got loads of time to cover before this actually happens, but some worth interesting numbers to plug in here. Courtesy of Drew C. Hallett on Twitter. You can follow him at Drew C. Hallett. That's with 2 L's and 2 T's at the end. Here's a couple of tweets from December 4th in which he listed the comparable ratings between, Michigan's offense, Florida State's defense, and vice versa, as sourced by S&P Plus on FootballOutsiders.com. What it comes down to, long story short, Florida State's defense compared to Michigan's offense overall. Michigan's offense 28th ranked, Florida State's 18th. Michigan 40th run offense. Florida State is 30th against the run. Passing offense, Michigan 11th, Florida State 25th against the pass. Standard and passing downs, much better disparaging gap in passing downs. 22 ranked for Michigan's offense, 54th ranked for Florida State's defense, and third down offense. This is a big shocker. Michigan ranked 5th offensively. Florida State's defense ranked 40th. And then when you flip things over, things become increasingly more in Michigan's favor. OSU, granted, has the 6th ranked overall offensive offense and the 4th best ranked run offense. Michigan, what else needs to be said about their defense? Number 1 ranked overall, number 3 against the run, best pass defense, absolute monster on third downs, number 2 ranked against OSU's 14th. So in terms of who could have the early advantage, if you want to hedge your bets early on, I think the safe money could be on Michigan. I would expect it to be a close, tight-knit defensive battle. But we'll see what happens, because what Harbaugh has multiple weeks of study film and whatever he needs to decipher to pinpoint the certain weaknesses of what he could use to exploit against Florida State. I mean, think about what he did in this time off between OSU game and the Florida game in the Citrus Bowl. That was shocking. So kind of funny though that they get to bookmark the year 2015 in a high-profile bowl game, albeit this one much more high-profile because it's a New Year's Six game, but it's against a team from the state of Florida. The Florida Gators on New Year's Day, and then 2 days before the year ends on December 30th, or a day or so, whatever, how you want to look at it, against Florida State. So kind of cool, neat bookend.
Now for the rest of the Michigan Wolverines football headlines. Jabril Peppers becomes a Heisman Trophy finalist. He wins the kind of award here. Let me see here. It was the John Nung Award.
He won the Horn Hornung Award.
Yeah,
which I believe
the Hornung Award. Thank you very much.
For the most versatile player of the season overall, and I think that definitely sums up Jabril Peppers' playing personality. What's in a nutshell, he is very, very versatile.
Yeah, that's true. But here's another case where he might not win the Heisman here. And you mentioned to me usually a telltale sign that it won't happen unless a major swerve happens. Louisville Cardinals quarterback Lamar Jackson won the Maxwell Award, so that pretty much at least evens things up, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if we're gonna go, since we're almost near award season, it's like getting a good nomination at either a SAG Award or Golden Globe or the Critics' Choice. That usually tends to an Oscar nom or an Oscar win down the road. So, it's kind of almost a give or take, or if you want to use wrestling terminology, the Royal Rumble to set up the main event of WrestleMania. So, in terms of that, using that theology and analogy here, it could be a slip of the tongue to say, yeah, Lamar Jackson's going to be winning the Heisman on Saturday night. Don't even bother tuning in. But, let's see what happens, because, in terms of what made this interesting, because Jackson's Louisville team had some stumbles late in the year. Now, if you want to play devil's advocate, you could say the same thing for Michigan. They lost 2 of their last 3. Even though I like to say, I'll go to my grave, forever bitter, hashtag not a first down, Michigan 27, Ohio State 24. I digress. Peppers, it was kind of a mixed bag. He had a great game, had a notable return that set up a key touchdown in the drive, also had a key interception that led to another touchdown on the opposite end. So he played a big part in Michigan having a chance to win. But then at the end of the day, however you want to look at it, from the view of an official or random, whatever, Michigan lost the game. They lost 2 of their last 3. They're not even going to go to the playoff, let alone contend for the national title. They didn't even win their division to play for the conference title. So in terms of looking at that criteria needed for winning the Heisman, it kind of hurts Pepper's chances. But who's to say, that it's not a necessary requirement, to have your team play for the national title if you don't win. I mean, for goodness sake, when Tim Tebow won the Heisman in 2007, his team was nowhere near the national title picture. In fact, they matched up against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl, which was Lloyd Carter's final game as head coach. So that is a noteworthy example where even though your team may not be playing for the big prize at the end, there's still a good chance based on how you performed and how much of value you are to your team that could tip your chances into your favor of possibly winning the Heisman Trophy. So like I said, it could be a drawn-out anticlimactic end, but let's see what happens. Let's say if it's not Lamar Jackson's name that's called on Saturday night, who could it be? Some people like to say Peppers. Others would like to say maybe Deshaun Watson. It could be one of those 3 guys, I would say. But if either way, it's a good accolade, because this is now the 5th finalist, Heisman finalist in Michigan football history. There was, because I'm trying to make sure I got this right, Tom Harmon, Desmond Howard, Charles Woodson, Chris Perry, and now Jabril Peppers. So, not bad. Not a bad company list to join.
Yep. So, who knows who might come out on top of that race. Other Michigan football headlines: Jake Butt, their tight end, their senior tight end, won the Mackey Award. Shane Morris, now a former Michigan Wolverine quarterback, will seek a graduate transfer. And the Wolverines team has recruited a 4-star commit cornerback, Andrew Thomas.
That'll be a good solid pickup, especially knowing that, We're going to see a whole slew of replacements on that defensive secondary next year. So if you can find a way to lock up a player like that, to stockpile, to help you reload quicker than rebuild, it'll be a nice pickup and good catch for the team in terms of recruiting. By the way, in terms of Shane Morris, I read a report saying that in terms of the school he's seeking to grad transfer to, one of those could be, Taylor, your Central Michigan Chippewas.
Oh.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
And speaking of the Central Michigan Chippewas, they will play the Tulsa Golden Hurricane in the Miami Beach Bowl on December 19th at 2:30 on ESPN. But that may be a surprise after Cooper Rush, senior quarterback now, is playing in his last game, which is a bowl game. The Chippewas may use Shane Morris.
I don't think that's actually possible or legal to do. When they say grad transfer, that usually means right at the end of your senior season or when you decide to, graduate from school, or whatever. They mean the following season, not the season in which you, like I said, if since Morris apparently made his intentions more clear by making this announcement in this season, it wouldn't take effect until the beginning of next season, because we're still technically in this season, because no bowl games have been played yet, and obviously these teams are eligible for postseason play. So by rule, they haven't officially finished out their 2016 season yet. Now, if this remains true and Moore still intends to grad transfer to CMU, that would not take place until the following season in 2017.
That's true. But speaking of which, their arch rivals, the Western Michigan Broncos football team, finished undefeated by beating the Ohio Bobcats 29-23 at Ford Field to win the MAC championship. The Broncos got off to a slow start, but kicked in 3 field goals to lead 9-0. But the Ohio Bobcats got on the board with a Jordan Reed touchdown reception from 8 yards out to make it 9-7. Western would strike back with 2 touchdowns and lead 23-7 at the break. But Jordan Reed inched the Cats even closer with another touchdown catch from 5 yards out. They would trail 23-13 on that. The Broncos kicked in a 33-yard field goal courtesy of Butch Hampton, but the Bobcats would keep coming back. Greg Windham would feed Poppy White for a long 31-yard touchdown pass to make this game interesting and make the score 26-20 with 1:09 left in the third quarter. The fourth quarter didn't have much scoring take place, however. Ohio would add 2 more field goals, while Western Michigan would add 1, but the Broncos defense would seal it with an interception by Robert Spillane with 51 seconds left. Zach Terrell finished 19 of 31 for 290 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Jamari Bogan led in rushing with 26 carries for 78 yards. And Corey Davis, the one and only, came up with 8 catches for 144 yards and a score. For Ohio, Windham, 14 of 30 for 214 yards, 3 touches and 1 pick, plus 3 carries and 14 yards. That's 228 yards total. Poppy White, 2 catches for 98 yards and his 31-yard TD. So Western Michigan moves all the way up to number 15 and will play the number 8 Wisconsin Badgers in the Cotton Bowl on January 2nd at 1 on ESPN.
Oh, man!
So the Broncos are working their way up.
Yeah, very, very good. I guess you could say this is a big reward for the heck of a season that they had. Depending on how you look at it or view it, or they played a weak schedule, or they played in this conference. You play who's on your schedule, and if you beat them, you beat them. You don't apologize for it. And Western certainly has not apologized. I'm sure as hell knowing PJ Fleck has not apologized for how Western has performed this year. So they've gotten it done. They're 13-0, and thanks to some timely play, or actually timely losing from Boise State at the end of the year. They were able to finish as the highest ranked group of 5 team. So, of course, that gave them, I guess you could say, an at-large invitation to one of these New Year's Six games. And most have projected the Cotton Bowl. That's what they ended up with. Interesting matchup. I guess this was Wisconsin's consolation prize for being the runner-up in the Big Ten title game to Penn State. So, I think that balances things out a little bit. I think I'm sure what would have happened if Penn State had managed to sneak into the playoff, who would have gotten that Rose Bowl spot? Could have been Michigan or Wisconsin. I think that's what would have been left up to committee. If you ask me, they would have picked Michigan. But anyway, the way it figures out, OSU's in the playoff, Penn State is out, but they can definitely, they'll be more than happy to settle for Rose Bowl. Michigan will have the Orange Bowl, and Wisconsin will have the Cotton Bowl.
Also, the Eastern Michigan Eagles will play the Old Dominion Monarchs in the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl on December 23rd at 1 on ESPN. So that caps off the list of all our Michigan college football teams being involved in bowl games. Unfortunately, the Michigan State Spartans are not one of them, but we have some news about the Spartans football team to cover right now.
Touchdown, MSU!
A developing story, defensive back Demetrius Cox has now pled not guilty to his past week's misdemeanor assault charge in which he quoted, "It was a false accusation." He pled not guilty this week, 1 week after he was arrested for that misdemeanor charge, and said, quote, it was a false accusation. So we'll stay on top of that unless the case is already over with. And then Malik McDowell reportedly will enter the 2017 NFL Draft. And speaking of the NFL Draft, back to Jabril Peppers, he was projected to be a top 10 NFL draft pick.
Well, that's if he forgoes his remaining years of eligibility and decides to go to draft anyway, which I wouldn't be too surprised if he does, because even some would say you may need to stay 1 year longer to help finish out I guess you could say polish off any raw traits he might have. To me, the way he's been performing this year, he would be a good pickup for any team right about now. And that's why we have coaches and trainers in the NFL to get these players up to their abilities as best as humanly possible. So I wouldn't feel any type of way, no matter what decision he makes. If he came back, great for the fan, great for Michigan fandom. If he decides to go early, good for him personally. Take care of himself, take care of his family. Hopefully he is smart with his money. So it doesn't really affect me negatively in any sort of way or fashion.
So with that, speaking of the Wolverines,
For 3, yes sir!
we transition to college basketball. The Wolverines basketball team, led by head coach John Beilein, 7-2. They rout the Kennesaw State Owls 82-55 rather, the past Saturday afternoon. Then on Tuesday, they edge the Texas Longhorns at Chrysler Center 53-50. Ed, what were your thoughts on those two last games?
Well, the Kennesaw State game, that was as close as a needed bounce back as humanly possible after that horrific collapse against Virginia Tech. So there's not much to go on there. That was a cupcake team you need to beat up on. That's exactly what you did. Now, this was going to be a much more competitive game because just on name value alone, Texas is Texas. Got some good players in their squad, Mack being one of those. He led the way with 18 points, 5-11 shooting. Neck and neck team, I guess you could say that these were two evenly matched. Records may not be an indicator, but the how they performed, how they had their peaks and valleys. It seemed like Michigan was getting close enough where, like you said, they could have pulled away like they did against Virginia Tech. But just some lagging, stalling with the offensive game, and Texas doing what they need to do, forcing turnovers, getting the rebound edge. It helped push things in their favor, but after a while, once things settled down, got more of a close, tight-knit battle, lead changes and whatnot, it came down in the end to Mo Wagner, who I guess if you're a Michigan fan, if you recognize from some of our earlier shows, got his first introduction to us by some of his play in the NCAA tournament and leading Michigan almost to a second or third round appearance before falling short against Notre Dame. But he was essentially key and crucial, in my opinion, the determining factor, the X factor in Michigan winning this game. He scored the putback with less than 20 seconds to go that gave Michigan the lead for good. And in the waning seconds, with Texas trying to get to the hoop to score a possible game-winning basket, Mo Wagner blocked the shot, let the Michigan gain control and the foul, and once you suck the free throws, game over. So now it was worth noting that according to mgoblog.com, John Beilein wanted to actually put Mark Donnell on the floor late in the game, but the assistant coach wisely, in hindsight, veered him off in that choice, and it paid out good dividends because Wagner was the difference in Michigan getting this much-needed victory.
So the Wolverines will tip off against the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles Saturday at 2 on BTN. Then they're off until a week from Sunday when they host the Northeastern Huskies at 7 on BTN. Two more easy games the Wolverines should win here.
No question.
Oh wait, that's no. Wait, that's Michigan State. I'm sorry. Michigan, it tips off at 8 on Saturday at the number 2 UCLA Bruins on ESPN2, and then an easy game home against the Central Arkansas Bears Tuesday at 9 on BTN. Ed, you have a scouting report on the Michigan UCLA game. It's a marquee matchup.
I do, in fact. Not only is this a marquee game, like you mentioned, Taylor, it's number 2 ranked team in the nation, primetime game on ESPN2 at Pauley Pavilion. So it's going to be a difference maker in terms of atmosphere and what this team is going to be looking towards. But there's a key factor, a key player they need to pay attention to for UCLA. Actually, in my opinion, it would be guard Lorenzo Ball. This kid is 6'6", plays point guard spot, yet he has such a unique versatility. In a way, reminds you of Jabril Peppers a little bit. He can shoot, he can attack the rim, he can block, he can do just about anything. He may not be as fast or may not have a smooth flowing jump shot, but the way he gets other teams involved with his defense, with his passing and ball handling, and just the way he just commands attention, which of course sets up his teammates for good open looks anyway, leads him to be the biggest X factor on the floor for either squad. And if you want to look at it, that's how UCLA was able to get that upset victory on the road against number 1 ranked Kentucky. So and Lorenzo Ball was a huge factor in that. So if there's anybody to pay attention to as to how in the hell Michigan is going to have a shot at winning, you have to neutralize Lorenzo Ball at all costs.
This will be a good one, for sure. Now the Michigan State Spartans basketball team.
Valentine for the win!
They won 80-76 over the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles. They struggled in that game like they usually have this season, and then they finally started to pull away in one game and win by 20 points, 77-57 at home over the Youngstown State Penguins. Both those two games were at Breslin Center. I've been reading each score sheet of each and every Michigan State Spartan basketball team, and from the bench, Nick Ward, of all people, is not only leading the bench, he has been on fire. Whereas Kenny Goins, as a starter, has posted 0 points in each of 2 games, and the rest of the games he has scored a very low amount in each of those other games. That Kenny Goins should, I believe, be a bench player, and Nick Ward should, without a doubt, be a starting player.
Well, How did he look against Duke specifically before we jumped to any conclusions? You probably had a good score sheet on that one.
Well, I believe he scored around 13 points, but Duke's a tough team, but
yeah.
in other games,
for them to score 13 points, keep them in the game like that, I can see what you mean by that. They need something because they've been seen to be middling in the road, where they beat up on the little sister of the poor, but if they face someone even remotely decent, they lose or have a tooth and nail fight to the death with, where you need inadvertent help from your own damn timekeeper to end the game quicker and faster than you wanted to, like you did against Florida Gulf Coast. A 1-point win over them and a 5-point win over Wichita State. Not too impressive looking if you want to be seen as a team to be a possible top 4 seed or top 3 seed come March or April here. So that's one thing they need to improve on is, not look so middling against pedantic teams. Look dominating is what you're supposed to be doing. And go and use this to help booster you as you head into the start of conference season soon.
Yeah, but in the starting rotation, because in the starting rotation, Miles Bridges has posted more points than far more points than all the rest of the starters. Even Nick Ward has outscored Miles Bridges. Besides the game in Duke, that there wasn't much scoring by any of the Spartan players, even though a couple of them might have been in double digits, might have been 13 each between Miles Bridges and Nick Ward. Nick Ward, even a couple times, has outscored Miles Bridges in like 2 score sheets total this season.
Interesting to bring up Bridges because now with this apparent news of him having this ankle injury, which will sideline him for about a couple weeks, according to Izzo, really affects to how can this team perform now without one of their key starters, and can this open up room for a guy like Nick Ward, even though it's far different positions, could it open up a chance for him to get more playing time? Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah. See what Nick Ward's really made of, for a change. And he'll have at least 2 chances against the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles Saturday at 2 on BTN, and then off until a week from Sunday, home against the Northeastern Huskies at 7 on BTN. So just let Nick Ward loose. Let Nick Ward loose if you need to, Tom Izzo.
And that way you can have a much more clear choice of what to do once the start of conference season begins, and even looking more down the road, when Miles Bridges gets back.
That's true. My Central Michigan Chippewas basketball team won 82-59 over Arkansas Pine Bluff, the Golden Lions. At home, Marcus Keene scored 31 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The past week, he scored 36 points and 5 assists. And then they won 107-97 over the Green Bay Phoenix. He scored 40 points this past week. This past Tuesday, rather. Marcus Keene has been on fire, and he's been leading the Chippewas. Also, David DeLeo has been stepping up. Braylon Raisin has been stepping up a little bit. Josh Kaczynski not doing very much on offense. He needs to step up a little bit more. Chips go to Champaign, Illinois, and play the Illinois Fighting Illini, who are 7-3 overall and 6-1 at home. But the Chippewas, who are 8-2, they also have a really good road record. Both those two teams tip off in Champaign Saturday at 3, and then they visit the Montana State Bobcats 5-5 overall and 5-1 at home. That's another tough game to tip off with. Wednesday at 9 on the Chippewa Sports Network with Don Shido. Fire up Chips. So that is college basketball. Man, that was a little bit quicker than we expected. Now it's time to transition back to the pros and switch to hockey. The Red Wings have a 13-11-3 record. They're in 5th place in the Atlantic Division and Wildcard Division, and 11th place in the Eastern Conference. They lost 2-1 in overtime at home to the Florida Panthers. Third time out of all the first 3 meetings, they've lost to the Panthers. And then Jared Careau made his NHL debut, one goal against through the first 2 periods, but the Red Wings defense messed him up. They lose to the Penguins 5-3 at Consol Energy Center Saturday night. Then the Red Wings got back to their winning ways. They beat the New York Islanders 4-3 in overtime on Sunday night, early evening. Danny DeKeyser with a game winner. Anthony Mantha with another goal. And then they finally win at NTS Center for the first time ever. They beat the Winnipeg Jets 4-3 in a 2-1 4-round shootout in Winnipeg. Henrik Zetterberg, another game-winning shootout. Tomas Tatar with a goal. Thomas Vanek with a goal. And the Red Wings are 4-0 in the shootout. They've been looking pretty good. Henrik Zetterberg, for example, 2 consecutive shootout goals, and both of them were game winners. Your thoughts?
Think about that first sentence that you mentioned. The Red Wings 4-0 in shootouts. Remember, in some seasons past during the last days of Babcock's tenure, where I guess if you're a fan and you went to overtime, you hope either way, no matter what happens, just get it done in overtime because you dreaded going to the shootout because it seems more often than not Detroit would come up on the short end of the stick, pardon the pun here, in terms of regarding those shootouts. Either not a good enough display from their goaltender or their selected shooter's going to get a damn thing done. Whereas this year alone, like you said, 4-0, quite a stark contrast. Henrik Zetterberg, who usually is not looked particularly as well or efficient rather on shootouts, he's had 2 back-to-back game winners essentially with the shootout goals. So I don't know what's happened. How they changed up their rhythm, changed up how they place certain players in those spots, rotation. How some of those players, the way they move individually with the puck, change up their speed, rhythm, whatever the case may be. Hope they keep at it because it's paying great dividends, and they're is evident in the current stat 4-0 in shootouts.
Hopefully, they continue their trend during the rest of the season. Prashant Thayer published an article earlier this week on Tuesday at 11:28 p.m. Eastern Time. It was about Anthony Mantha's world and us just living in it. Anthony Mantha's greatness and the advanced statistics, advanced metrics show why he's so good. I don't know if you read this or not yet, but using expected goals, which is assess the quality shot taken by a player that can help us predict future scoring, we can see that Mantha is consistently generating good scoring chances. From the first chart, we see that Mantha leads all Red Wings forwards in 5-on-5 individual expected goals per 60 minutes. And individual, which is IXG60 for short. And why is that important? Well, DTM About Hard on Twitter found out that IXG60 rather, which stands for 5-on-5 individual expected goals per 60 minutes, better estimates future goal scoring as compared to individual goals per 60 minutes, IG60, and individual shot attempts per 60 minutes, ICF60. The second
how the way you described reminds me on how analyze and view the PR metric in NBA to determine what a player could do per 100 possessions, how many points he could score, how can he average in the rebounds and assists, which I guess you could say it helps determines the maximum potential that player can contribute to his team. So you're describing this metric here for how it works in Mantha's case. Just eerily reminds me of that situation. Continue.
And then the second chart reads, the takeaway expected goals are a better predictor of future scoring than Corsi and goals. The second chart and the first chart both show that Mantha is generating high-quality chances on a consistent basis and as such can be expected to continue scoring at a good clip. The eye test backs this as he continues to generate high-level scoring chances all by himself. And it shows, and the video at the New York Islanders shows that he almost scored a goal by making a really good move. That's two good moves, actually. He undressed two Islander players and still got stopped by Yaroslav Halak. But unlike Dylan Larkin last year, Mantha has a PDO, a sum of 5-on-5 on-ice shot percentages, plus 5-on-5 on-ice SV percentage or save percentage of 103.84, which is driven by his save percentage 96.49, as opposed to the shot percentage 6.85. What that means is Prashant Iyer does expect more goals to eventually go in against the Wings when Mantha is on the ice, but there's not much suggesting that Mantha is getting lucky from an offensive standpoint. His individual all-situations shot percentage is 10%, which is not unreasonable, as opposed to Larkin, who had an all-situations shot percentage of 14.67% at this time last year. It's why many felt that Larkin's scoring pace would slow down last year, whereas I'd expect Mantha to be able to sustain his current pace,
if not surpass it, which is very surprising, pleasantly surprising to say the least.
Yeah, and then another chart shows why Mantha is also one of the strongest drivers of shot attempts relative to his teammates. Looking at 5-on-5 shot attempts and adjusting for the score, we see that Mantha is second in the NHL among forwards in his ability to drive shot attempts relative to his teammates. He's got a plus 11.16%, which is 0.19% behind Brad Marchand of the Boston Bruins, and 0.05 ahead of Patrice Bergeron of the Bruins. So that also explains something here. Another chart that reads the top 5 forward combos in 5-on-5 score-adjusted Corsi for percentage. Anthony Mantha, Tomas Tatar, and Henrik Zetterberg. That line is the fifth in the NHL with a 71.96 total time on ice, a 5-on-5 scoring adjusted shot attempt percentage of 64.77%, a 5-on-5 scoring chance for percentage of 71.52%, 5-on-5 goals for per 60 ratio of 3.08, and a 5-on-5 goals against per 60 ratio of 0.93. When that line is on the ice at 5-on-5, 64.77% of all shot attempts taken by the Red Wings, and that's dominant and one of the best lines the Wings have iced since Zetterberg played with Pavel Datsyuk and Tomas Holmstrom. Now, there are some videos which you may or may not have seen that Anthony Mantha can also play very good defense. He wins three loose puck battles in the offensive zone at Barclays Center the past Sunday, allowing the Wings to maintain the puck in the offensive zone for 45 seconds. This is a big reason why, in the offensive zone here, but this is a big reason why opposing teams generate very few shots against the Wings when Mantha's on the ice. In addition to his ability to win loose puck battles, Mantha has also demonstrated excellent hockey IQ in deciding when to attack from his third-man high position. As the third-man high, Mantha's primary responsibilities are to make sure that he doesn't get trapped low and that he's able to support his defenseman to prevent a 3-on-2 rush if the first two forecheckers are beat. However, if timed correctly, the third man can jump in to apply pressure on the opposition as they try to break out of their zone. It can be risky and ill-advised if done poorly, but Mantha showcases his high IQ on Zetterberg's third period goal against the Islanders. The Red Wings forwards are ranked by 5-on-5 fewest offensive face-off zone start percentage. Anthony Mantha is second fewest with 14.58%, and the second highest in 5-on-5 defensive face-off zone start percentage of 19.17%. Additionally, Mantha has seen his fair share of opposing top six forwards. You see here, teammates and competition. Anthony Mantha this year, the red line indicates the league average. The teammates' percentage of ice time and the competition percentage of ice time. If you keep looking at this article here, so overall, Mantha has been outstanding this season. He's generating chances at a fantastic rate, driving shot attempts at an elite level, and has found chemistry with Zetterberg and Tatar. At this point in time, it's hard to argue against Mantha being the Red Wings' best forward. When Abdelkader, Athanasiou, and Helm get healthy, Ken Hahn will have to make some tough decisions about who stays and who goes. It should be non-negotiable that Mantha remains with the big club. And that's saying something right here. Andreas Athanasiou just updated earlier this past Wednesday, was activated from the injured reserve after a 12-game absence with a sprained left knee, and will play Friday against the Blue Jackets at Joe Louis Arena. So a tough decision for Ken Hahn to make would be to send Tomas Jurko down, back down to the Grand Rapids Griffins if he were to keep Anthony Mantha. And I think that's possible.
Well, with the way Mantha's performed in the AHL, it was almost given a precursor, prelude to how he was going to do once he got the call up and got the chance from his head coach and his GM. And he's definitely more than made the most of it. So you only hope he gets his chance. He's more than done enough to prove his point, prove his value, prove his worth, and should get the reward of staying up here, no matter what happens when it comes to Athanasiou and others coming back from injury.
Yeah, Abdelkader hasn't done much. He's only recorded 4 goals and 4 assists. That's 8 points in the first 22 games, which is not good enough.
You are pathetic!
Oh, yeah, but it was worth that contract, huh, Kenny?
Yeah. Yeah, and if Abdelkader and Helm were to return, that's another question to be asked later or in our next episode on Spreaker. But Athanasiou was, as we recall, was put on long-term injured reserve, and Abdelkader was put on the 7-day injured reserve. This might have been a mistake by headline from Bleacher Report. It might have been that really Athanasiou was put on the 7-day IR, and Abdelkader, being out 2 to 4 weeks, was put on the long-term injured reserve. So it might have been a mix-up here. But for Darren Helm, he's been he had been injury prone in the past, but since then he has not been injury prone lately. But he's back on the injured reserve now, and still waiting for a return date. You don't have any news on that on Helm, do you?
Not at the moment, other than what I gave you originally.
Yep. So, Andreas Athanasiou is needed Friday at home against the Columbus Blue Jackets, which drops the puck on the Red Wings' next 4-game homestand Friday at 7:30. They are home against the Philadelphia Flyers Sunday at 5. They host the Arizona Coyotes Tuesday at 7:30. And they wrap up their homestand on Thursday at 7:30 against the Los Angeles Kings. So 3 of those 4 games are going to be really tough, except for the Coyotes game on Tuesday. So with that, we have covered all Red Wings here. Now it's time for the Pistons segment.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
They had a winning streak going on. They slugged it out against the Boston Celtics and won 121-114 to get the revenge at TD Bankworth Garden last Wednesday. Then on Friday, they demolished the Atlanta Hawks 121-85 at Phillips Arena. Then on Sunday, they came back and Reggie Jackson made his return, but they lost 98-92, obviously, to the Orlando Magic. But they recovered with a 102-91 win on Tuesday at the Palace against one of their division rivals, the Chicago Bulls. And finally, in back-to-back games, as tired as they were, they put up only 77 points and lost 87-77 to the Charlotte Hornets at Time Warner Cable Arena when Marvin Williams made his return. But in spite of that, Andre Drummond came up with a big 20-20, 26 points and 20 rebounds, and shot 4 of 7 from the free throw line. It still lowered the Pistons' free throw percentage to 62.5%. Darren Hilliard hitting the only other free throw attempt, which totals up to 5 for 8, which is equivalent to 62.5%. But Andre Drummond hitting 4 free throws
Still,
instead of 2.
Pretty damn good. 4 out of 7 still pretty damn good, and also became the first NBA player this season to have 2 2020 games. So he's the first NBA player this year to have multiple 2020 games. Hopefully it's not the last we see of them. Maybe he runs off a string like he did last year. But I'm sure he would rather focus on improving his free throw percentage, which looks to be the case in some spurts here. Quite a very lag. I think you can attribute the loss to how their offense performed. Just a lot of bad shots, a lot of bricks. Yeah, it was just not fun to watch. Even though, like you said, even though Drummond had his big game, where was the rest of the team? Detroit only shot 38% from the field, and they were 4 out of 27 from 3-point range. That's 14% total. Yikes! So it's a little bit of up-down theory here. Hopefully it doesn't lead to something big because they had been doing so well in recent games leading up to that. They had won 4 out of their last 5 leading into that Charlotte game, including a needed win. 3 big wins in my opinion. 2 of those on the road against high-quality playoff caliber teams in the Celtics and Hawks, and then a win at home against your division rival, which looks pretty. With Chicago, they look pretty decent so far. They're 2 games over 500, and they hold currently at this moment, the third spot in the Central Division. And, another team, let's not forget, obviously we know about Cleveland, but Milwaukee's been pretty good so far also. They have the second spot in terms of mere winning percentage. Still, 11-9 is better than 12-10. So we kind of knew coming into this season that, like I said, especially with the additions of what Chicago had done and Indiana, Milwaukee with Giannis, and Cleveland, of course, being the defending champions, this division was going to be a bloodbath. And you would hope the Pistons would find themselves on the better side of things in that top three of those teams of that 5-team division. So far, they're on the outside looking in, which, if the season ended today, would not exactly bode well for the playoff chances. But, there's still a whole hell of a lot of season left to go. Reggie Jackson, I think, he had 13 points or so in his return, and maybe 7 assists in limited time. So once his minutes get bumped up, once he works off that rust, gets back to full strength, he'll be fine. He'll be consistent and combined with his talents and efforts of Drummond and Tobias Harris and whatnot. KCP started to perform up to par level. There's a good chance this team could ring off a good rack off a good string of victories and get them a good spot, similar to where they were before having locking up a playoff spot late last year.
So Reggie's return from the injured reserve: 18 points against the Orlando Magic, 7 against the Bulls, and 10 against the Hornets. But in totality, Reggie got off to a hot start against the Orlando Magic despite the loss, in spite of the loss, but then he started showing his rustiness against the Magic. I'm not the Magic, but the Bulls and the Hornets. There's still lots of time for him to recover from it and be red hot again.
Yeah, he missed. Right, listen, he missed over a month's worth of action. It's very understandable. So it's not like Kyrie Irving missed a couple months, and yet when he comes back, he's shooting lights out. Or even in some other instances like that. Reggie, he's a different caliber of player, so it takes a while for him to get back to his usual playing self. But give it time, give it a couple of weeks or so, he'll be up to speed. There's no doubt.
All right. Well, Pistons have 3 easy teams that they should beat coming up. Friday at 8, they're at the 6-16 Minnesota Timberwolves at Target Center. Sunday at 6, they host the 5-18 Philadelphia 76ers, who are in last place in the Eastern Conference. And then Wednesday at 8:30, they go to American Airlines Center and play the 4-17 Dallas Mavericks Wednesday at 8:30. So the Pistons had better route all these 3 teams, period.
I'm actually kind of weary because they don't really seem to really do well on West Coast trips. This kind of counts as a West Coast trip, even though Dallas is in the Central Time Zone. But, let's see how they do that. I'm kind of nervous about that one, more so that would be than the Minnesota game. Obviously, the ones I have least doubts about is Philly. For the love of Christ, you better win that game. But again, good chance, like you mentioned, Taylor, for them to get back in the thick of things and improving their standings chances. If they win these 3 games in a row, it'll be a nice, good start to that.
Yeah, and I think they should anyway. Dallas is not Minnesota and Dallas are not like in the West Coast, but more like in the Midwest or something like that in the United States of America. Just like
True,
closer to a lot closer to the central regions of the continent.
Yeah, but in terms of team strength, Minnesota is expected to go further places this year, and like I said, I'm a little bit wary of that trip to Dallas. I just have an odd feeling about that. So if you're me, to quell my fears down, I would really like it to go 2-1. I wouldn't mind the loss being to Dallas. Just please beat the Sixers. All I ask. Joel Embiid is looking good. Just beat them, please.
The last time the Pistons played the Mavericks in Dallas last season, they won 109-92. And that was when Reggie Jackson was on the court and Andre Drummond put up a 20-20.
Yeah, but that was obviously a clearly healthy Reggie Jackson, not a Reggie Jackson shrugging off rust coming back from a knee injury. So,
well, we'll see what happens with Reggie down the road. He might work
absolutely.
off his rust in time.
Who knows? We'll see. But again, I wouldn't. Like I said, I have more stock built into seeing how you do against Minnesota and Philly than what you would do against Dallas.
Yeah, sorry. It may sound like I'm getting my hopes up, but we both have valid points on Reggie Jackson and the way he has come back. But still, you never know what goes on. So, moving on, only one Michigan sports team left to cover in our episode here, and that is the Detroit Tigers.
That one is long gone.
Now, a month ago, the Tigers were eager to trade away their veteran players, but now, this past Monday, the general manager Al Avila said the Tigers were, quote, less motivated, unquote, to trade away their veteran star players such as Justin Verlander, Miguel Cabrera, Ian Kinsler, Francisco Rodriguez, J.D. Martinez, Victor Martinez, Justin Upton, etc. And Jeff Moss on Twitter, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Detroit Sports Rag, on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR, followed up with his tweets on Monday. Quote, following are my thoughts regarding Pope John Paul Morosi's report that the Tigers are not as focused on dumping salary as they were last month. That's number one. Number two, Mike Ilitch became very ill this past spring. Chris Ilitch took control of the team, immediately ordered a dumping of the salary. Number three, Chris Ilitch's first edict was for Al Avila to try to dump Justin Upton, a signing his dad wanted to make, and he did not. No deal could be made. Number three, that his dad is Mike Ilitch, actually. Number four, yeah. Yep. Number four, Chris Ilitch is going to sell the Tigers the moment his dad dies.
Oh, man!
And that's legitimate, too. Cutting $30 million off the budget was designed to make the sale more attractive. Number five, I believe during the Pistons' negotiations to Little Caesars Arena and discussions of Gore's eventual interest in the Tigers occurred. Number six,
oh, man!
We already know that Tom Gores and Dan Gilbert have teamed up to bring a soccer team to downtown Detroit. Number seven, do you think the pair of Gilbert and Gores, G&G, would rather own an MLS team downtown as opposed to the Detroit Tigers? Ed, I'm going to let you answer that one right away.
Repeat the last one again, please. I'm sorry.
The last one? Do you think the pair of Gilbert and Gores would rather own an MLS team, a Major League Soccer team, downtown as opposed to the Detroit Tigers?
I'm not sure, because I'll be honest, I'm not really quite that favorable. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. I'm not really digging the idea of Dan Gilbert, because you saw how much of a I guess you could say dick measuring contest or whatever you want to call it between not only LeBron James' first tenure in Cleveland, but even when he got here even when he returned into trying to factor out and manage who would make the decisions on not personnel, but also how this team could be run and constructed, put together to how LeBron would want to help bring home a championship. You saw how much of a struggle that was. Maybe the atmosphere will be different. I don't know, but I'm just not feeling too trustful of Gilbert. That's my opinion.
So you don't believe that Gilbert and Gores?
I'm sure. I wouldn't believe the whole MLS thing. I think obviously when given the chance to run the Tigers or the Pistons, whatever, yeah, they would definitely he would definitely jump up. Well, obviously not the Pistons, but the Tigers. I think it would jump at that chance, given the connections to the city, how he's managed and whatnot, given contributions and other instances. I'm sure he wouldn't mind it. I just wouldn't be too giddy or optimistic for how the tenure might go under his watch. If it's anything similar to what Cleveland had to go through, which led to a star player leaving, thank goodness LeBron found it out of the goodness of his heart, to go back to Cleveland after how he was treated and how Dan Gilbert wrote that extremely laughably pathetic letter when LeBron left. Good thing he had found the goodness of his heart to put all that aside and do what was best for his city and not necessarily Dan Gilbert. But I doubt we will see a similar situation here in Detroit, and I don't know. I just wouldn't feel comfortable about that. That's just me. That's my honest to goodness gut feeling on that.
Well, I'm going to give you some more hints as I continue here. Gilbert, number 8, has an issue of owning casinos, which is a conflict with purchasing an MLB team, in parentheses, see Ilitch Marion Motor City Casino, out of parentheses. Number 9, would it be easier for Gilbert to work around the casino issue with Gores as a partner in purchasing the Tigers? And number 10, would not shock me if Gores indicated he wasn't scared off by the Tigers' high payroll, which has led to Avila backing off the fire sale at number 10. And number 11, finally, one thing I know for sure based on information gleaned from the Ilitch family members and Olympia Entertainment employees, Chris will sell the Tigers. End. So, Chris Ilitch will sell the Tigers. If not to get Dan Gilbert or Tom Gores, then who?
No, that's the wild bit. I think, right, the easy money, early money, not easy money, but early money would be on Gilbert, but that's because, like I said, the name, familiarity of his connection to the area. Other than that, right, who would be a good question because, granted, I may have my doubts about Gilbert, but who else is going to buy this team, depending on how things may come about, once Mike Ilitch passes on.
Yeah, that's true. Still, again, we pass our condolences to Mike Ilitch and the Ilitch family, as well as the Daniels family. There's more, though. Justin Spiro on Twitter at Darko State News, now the managing editor of GregHenson.com, followed up on Tuesday and tweeted, source, Tigers ownership remains determined to shed more salary, but will not dump marquee players without premium prospects or youth coming back. My position on this offseason, if the Tigers can stockpile young, high-end, controllable talent, go ahead and tear it down. I was also told unequivocally that Verlander wants to stay. That's Justin Verlander, the ace, wants to stay and has limited teams he'd sign off on. If moved, he wants the Dodgers bad, the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't hate the Tigers' position as much as most. They'll either run it back with a very talented group or load up with high-end youth. Unquote. So that's all that from Justin Spiro. So Ed, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, I hate to sound like a smart ass here, but I think if you're having some trouble with that, the word is unequivocally.
Unequivocally, thank you.
But if in terms of trying to, I actually could see where I could agree with the Verlander stuff because Justin knows how close the Dodgers got to get to that next step, get to that next level. Talent they've accumulated on offense, making that mammoth deal. The Red Sox years back, getting players like Adrian Gonzalez along the way, getting players like Yasiel Puig, who they have currently. Not to mention the pitching staff, which is notable by Clayton Kershaw. So I'm sure imagining a Kershaw-Verlander 1-2 combo would be a terrifying thought. to stare down in a short series situation. And I'm sure absolute Verlander would see, listen, I still have some time left in my prime. I'm not done yet. I may not be 2011, 2012 JV, but I'm still pretty damn good. I've rebounded after a couple down years or so. So I think it comes down to, yes, Verlander would much prefer, if he had the choice, the primary choice, he would stay in Detroit. He loves the fans, loves the city, loves the atmosphere, loves playing for this team. But if it came down to it where, hey, he wants to win a ring, it'll be a travesty of a player of his caliber to exit his career without a championship. I wouldn't mind him if he says, hey, put me on a team that's ready to win and ready to win now. And when you factor in that, what the Dodgers represent, and also LA connections, and, it doesn't hurt when you have one of the hottest women in the world as your fiance, soon to be wife.
Kate Upton.
Hashtag I love Kate Upton, by the way. It's not a hard to guess type of answer here. So sure, I'd buy it into seeing Verlander wanting to go to the Dodgers. Why not?
That's a very, very interesting point. So, with all that being covered, it's now time for 10 questions. Are you ready, Ed?
Absolutely, Taylor. So just go ahead and let him rip, my friend.
It's time for 10 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth.
Question number 1. How can the Lions offense turn all their field goals into touchdowns on more drives than they had this season?
It's simple. Stop playing pussyfooted and trust your quarterback. Since 2015, Matthew Stafford has, I believe, if I'm correct to be exact, either 41 or 42 touchdown passes with zero interceptions. So you're telling me that you don't trust a guy who in 2 years now has accumulated in the red zone, money zone here, over 40 touchdowns and 0 picks? That means he's done something right with his decision making. So trust him a little bit more to do what he can, get that ball to the end zone. Design plays where you push it as far as you can, not these fucking, short 5-yard away check downs or whatnot, where it puts yourself in a 3rd and goal situation where, play calling. Jim Bob Cooter, in my opinion, he's done lots of wonders with Stafford, obviously, but he needs to get better in terms of using his play calling near the red zone.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Next question.
Question number 2. Can Joique Bell help the Lions running game the rest of the season?
I doubt it because, like I said, the way that they're constructed as a team and how their running game goes to begin with, it's not effective anyways. If anything of them's trying to find something to substantiate and produce a running game of some sort, it's the short passes and screen plays out of the backfield, using guys like Theo Riddick, even on instance Zach Zenner as well, to get you little gritty, grindy yards to set you up in much more manageable 2nd or 3rd down situations. But other than that, there's not much, no matter who you add, unless you added Matt Forte all of a sudden. I doubt that the running game would supremely improve overnight.
Well, considering their offensive line hasn't been too helpful with the running game. They've been getting whether they be getting too cocky or just not pushing or pulling their weight against the opposing defensive front. That's what they need to do. Their offensive line needs to put in more power against the defensive front. They need to show them exactly what they're made of.
Well, shit, if that's the case, why don't we just trade for Dallas' O-line? How about that? I'd much rather take that then.
Yeah, that would be even better.
Next question.
Make my day with that.
Yeah. Question number 3. Will the Lions' secondary defense keep up their momentum after their win at New Orleans?
They should, because they're going from facing Drew Brees to facing Brian fucking Hoyer. Enough said.
Yeah. Just take advantage. That's all we need.
Next question.
Question number 4. How does the Michigan Wolverines' ranking in the college football playoff poll affect them for next season? Mostly positively.
Well, it gives them the chance of there's still work to be done. There's still unfinished business. You still got 10 wins again this year, which is mightily impressive for Jim Harbaugh, no matter how you splice it or look at it. Getting double-digit win seasons in back-to-back years, not an easy feat. You beat Michigan State, but you still have goals to accomplish. You want to beat Ohio State. You want to win your division. You want to play for and win a Big Ten championship, and eventually get to the college football playoffs. So you can use this to how you came so close. Use that as your motivational fuel. Now, granted, you don't know what the roster will look like, but the motivation should be there. The mentality should be there. And with this crazed, psychotic head coach as your leader, you should be put in a mental state to where it's all or nothing. Essentially, it is championship or championships, plural or bust type of season. Otherwise, it would be seen as a failure. In some instances, it's kind of seen as a failure for this year because, like I said, how you started, how you were ranked to begin with, and how you progressed, how you looked throughout the season, to stumble the way you did, 2 losses in your last 3 games, puts a bit of a big damper on the season. Now, you did get a New Year's 6 invitation, but still, that's not where you wanted. Anyway, you wanted to be one of those Final Four teams. You didn't get it, so that, like I said, gives you that motivating factor to, hey, let's get shit done. Let's not fuck around. Put this thing to bed. Playoff or bust next season.
Yep. It was almost like that's almost like this season for me.
Next question.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with that sentiment of some fans seeing how they performed second half of last season, or the majority of last season, and how they did this season. Tremendous disappointing finish. No question about it.
Yep. Question number 5: will Jabril Peppers win this season's Heisman Trophy?
I'm going to say no. Pains me to say because I would love it. I would mark out like crazy, but to me, it's either going to be Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson. Smart money says Jackson, but I wouldn't be surprised knowing the fact that the team is in the playoff. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with Watson. I'll be at work, so I won't necessarily catch the telecast at all. By the time I get home, I'll probably miss the whole thing. So I get a notification on my phone from ESPN or whatever that says Jabril Peppers wins Heisman Trophy. I'll shit myself.
That's
I would have not expected at all.
That's right, because Michigan didn't reach the college football playoff despite all of Jabril Peppers' work, and
even win his conference title.
Yeah, that's true. That's another thing. You gotta take both. You gotta take both the conference championship and the one of the 4 berth seeds in the college football playoff. That's what you got to do in order for your most versatile,
definitely help better.
Your most versatile player to make a run at the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee you win, but it does bolster your chances significantly.
Yeah.
Next question.
Question number 7. Should Nick Ward be in the starting lineup for the Michigan State Spartans men's basketball team from here forward this season?
I'm going to say yes. He's put in good production. He's shown good versatility to his usage. He's provided a little bit of a spark on both ends a little bit. He's definitely filled in terms of getting his minutes increased due to the Miles Bridges injury. So I'd say, yeah, give the kid a shot. See what happens.
Yeah, that is definitely valid.
Next question.
It's not a make or break move. If this won't hurt or harm Izzo if things don't go entirely right, I say, yeah, this is a low risk, high reward type of decision in my view.
Yeah, 100% agreeable. Question number 8. If Anthony Mathis stays up with the Red Wings after Andreas Athanasio's activation from the injury reserve and they make the playoffs for the 26th consecutive season, can they make a deeper playoff run?
No, they're a fundamentally flawed and weak team. They have a bevy of issues to work on, better defenseman play, holding on to late game leads, which is quite essential. If you want to make a deep playoff run, you need to hold on to a fucking lead in the third period. Other than that, like I said, they've been first round flameouts of 3 out of the last 4 seasons, 4 out of the last 5, whatever the case it is. So no, I doubt things will be the same unless it's thank you. So unless it takes a supreme godly effort from their starting goaltender, whoever that is, by the way, that could be a pondering question, interesting question to look at down the road. But whoever it is, it's going to take a godly effort from them just to maybe steal a game or two, because I don't trust their defense, don't trust their defensemen, I do not trust their ability to protect leads late in games. So that alone, more than anything, sees me as of the mindset of even if they make the playoffs, they'll get bounced in the first round again.
Yeah,
Which means this season would have been all.
I don't trust their defensemen either.
Next question.
Question number 9. What are the chances the Wings keep Anthony Mantha up as of right now?
I say it's good. The way he's been playing this whole year, it'll be astoundingly shocking and completely idiotic if he's seen as that last man out. I don't know what, because the way he has performed, it's got to be you have to hope that it has garnered attention, enough of the right attention from the right necessary people, i.e. head coach Jeff Blashill and GM Ken Holland.
Yeah, and the thing that bothers me is Steve Ott. He only has like 2 or 3 points this season. Justin Abdelkader still has 8, which is still better. The Wings could actually terminate Steve Ott's contract and cut him, and then put Justin Abdelkader back on the active roster and put him in the lineup instead, and cut Ott loose. So that makes even more room for Anthony Mantha to stay, which is even greater. And then when Helm comes back, who knows what the hell Holland might do. But bonus question here: what are the chances the Wings make the playoffs if Anthony Mantha stays up? Because right now they're in 11th place in the Eastern Conference and 5th in the Wild Card Division and Atlantic Division.
Well, like I said, the reasons I explained before, don't trust, it'll be ad nauseum if I repeated it, but the reasons I stated before in one of the previous answers gives my reasons why I don't think they'll even be strong enough to make one of those last spots. I'm hopeful to be right in this case. And even if they did, it'll just be a first round flameout again.
All right. One more question.
Next question.
Number 10. What will the Tigers decide to do with their roster and their payroll down the road this offseason? Because, after they keep Brad Ausmus, they decided to try to put up a fire sale and at least test the waters of the free agent market. But nope. But every other MLB team is looking at each high price contract. For example, Verlander's and Miguel Cabrera's, for example, they're way too damn expensive. So the Tigers, that makes the Tigers less motivated to trade them away. But now, according to Spiro, they're still willing to shed some of their payroll, but not trade their veterans. It's not really a pendulum swing, a continuous pendulum swing. It's more like a stoppage in that and finally getting in the middle of that range.
Yeah, it's a neutralization of sorts of where this is not their desired outcome, what they wanted to do, or rather what Chris Ilitch would have wanted to have had happen. He wanted to be a fire sale, but due to, like I said, not much of a boil in the water, so to speak, there's been that much of a heat up in the offer display. To where, I would say, for the sake of what you're doing, if you keep the team as currently constructed, let's not forget you did deal with a string of bad luck injuries in the second half, which in many ways prevented you from getting to the playoffs. No matter what I think about Brad Ausmus as manager or not. So let's say they stay for the most part more healthy, not completely healthy, because injuries are going to happen. It's a long season. injuries are bound and guaranteed to happen. But as long as if they're not too crippled by key injuries to key players at key points of the season, you can make an argument that, hey, they have as good a shot as any to get into the playoffs. And once you get in, you just need to get in, and that's where the real season begins. You just need strong pitching. Got that with Verlander and Boyd and Fulmer. What you got from hopefully a returning Zimmerman in that case as well. So, like I said, the way it's currently constructed, if you don't get the fire sale, which I would probably at this moment lean towards no, give it another shot. See what the fuck happens, especially now that Chicago, they gave away Adam Eaton and they gave away Chris Sale. I don't see Cleveland being, this scary team to make a repeat run again at the pennant, let alone the division. We saw what that did to KC this year. Maybe the same thing will happen on a much more faster pace to Cleveland. And that leaves it open for Chicago, Detroit to maybe take advantage of. Because we know the Twins ain't doing jack shit for the next couple of years. So let's see what the Tigers can do. And the way you're currently constructed, you still have a good payroll advantage. You have high-key players. Go out, win the division, see what it takes you and what you do in the playoffs. Give it one last shot, no matter what.
A couple additional notes. Jordan Zimmerman had such a fluke season this calendar year, and the Indians were one game away from winning the World Series against the Chicago Cubs, who finally broke their Billy Goat curse. But speaking of the Tigers, since they already don't have a center fielder, I found out that Lorenzo Cain is now available. I think he was released from the Kansas City Royals, and there was a question from Bless You Boys from SB Nation: should the Tigers pick him up? What are your thoughts?
If it don't cost too much, I say give it a shot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna post that article on our Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth. I retweeted that on my Twitter handle at DT2Phillips. You can follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313. And that wraps up our 10 questions segment for all the listeners and fans out there. If you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. That wraps up episode 243 of Spreaker's feed of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, thanks so much again for your help. I'll talk to you again next week for episode 244, which is possibly on Thursday.
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to it, Taylor. I'll see you soon. See you then. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. And before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this podcast, this episode, and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share it as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips online at Spreaker.com because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, you can follow Sports Radio Detroit at Sports Radio DET, Sports Radio Det, and send them a direct message or email them at sportsradiodetroit.com in the contact section. Also, like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. And finally, find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. Once again, follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and at EdSmith313, and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth, and join our Facebook group, The Michigan Sports Truth. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks very much for listening. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.
The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinions or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.